everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is the Banned Books podcast, outlaw theology for the
in-laws.
What do you want to say? Law-abiding citizen for the in-laws. I was just thinking about that after I dropped my kids off at school. That outlaw comes with such a romanticized set of images to it, but in-laws carry such pejorative images. It's not really fair.
It isn't.
I'm not an outlaw. I'm an in-law. No, that doesn't make sense. I don't like that at all.
Well, nobody wants to be bound to another person, right? By law. So,
by law, exactly.
Yeah.
So unless we
rebel against the law.
Right. Yeah. I don't think anyone would subscribe to a podcast, a Christian podcast, that's for theological in-laws.
Come join us. Be bound to us.
Yeah. This is for all the rebel outlaw children of Christianity. Yeah, I'll listen to that. This one's for the law-abiding in-laws of Christianity. We're trying to appeal to a very narrow demographic.
I think we're done with we're talking about the bondage of the will, though, aren't we?
Are we?
Are we ever?
Are we ever?
See, I saw you were going there.
No, I was going to say, we're children of evangelical Christianity. We're children of Erasmus in the United States.
Well, and I thought it'd be fun, to use your book for Bible class. So we did. And then we get to the chapter, and it's like long quote or long reference to bondage of the will. I'm like,
yeah.
Wait a minute. I've been doing that. Now I have to do that here again. Anyway. There you go.
Are we going to do it here, live, in person? Mm-hmm. And accept the actual consequences for what he's saying?
Well, it's Memorex, after all.
Well, you can always just say, hey, I didn't write this.
Oh, that's true. I'd rather not talk about this, but it's right here. So.
Don't hate the play, I hate the game.
There you go.
And by the way, that's Christopher Gillespie.
Chillin' and Willin', holiday maxing and relaxing.
And this is Donovan Riley, and I am not holiday maxing and relaxing. I refuse to succumb to Christmas cheer.
Yeah, at this point, when this drops, we'll be preparing sermons from our hard drives for Christmas Day.
Exactly. I was going to say, I already got my Christmas morning sermon done.
There you go.
It's actually the article that I wrote for 1517 for Christmas.
I see.
And then when I finished writing the article, I was like, this would make a good Christmas morning sermon.
Wait a minute. Your writing voice is your preaching voice?
So let's pull back the veil. All you do is switch the pronouns from us and we to you, and you've got a sermon.
Boom.
So if you're ever wondering, hey, what can I do to prepare a sermon for Sunday? I don't have anything. Go find an article in 1517, change all the we's and us's to you's. Done.
Don't encourage laziness.
It's not laziness, it's efficiency.
Okay.
And as always, we start off with a tangent, a segue, a rabbit trail, which is, I think, a great way to begin episode 100.
Pleasant banter.
Pleasant banter. I like that. Or stupid and impious, if you've been listening.
Oh, impious. Impious.
Stupid and impious banter, to quote Luther.
Because if you say impious, nobody knows what you mean.
That's true. Yeah. If you want to sound extremely conceited and pretentious,
use big words and don't define them.
I was going to say use words and then mispronounce them, like schedule. Well, I've checked my schedule, and your what? My schedule.
My car is in the garage.
You mean my schedule? Well, I suppose if you're uneducated, you pronounce it that way. Yes, the garage, the garage. I'm sorry, the garage, the garage.
Because that's where the carriage goes. Is in the garage.
The garage. But we digress. Even
speaking
deeper.
Of British,
speaking of British people, nice segue. That's a very professional move. We're going to dive into Gilbert Keith Chesterton this morning. And if you are not familiar with Gilbert Keith Chesterton, he popularized vineyard music in the late 80s and early 90s. Just Gilbert Keith Chesterton sounds like a folksy worship leader.
I got it. Oh, because they using the
three names, Gilbert
initials.
Keith Chesterton. Yeah, almost like he's a country music artist.
Oh, there you go.
But instead, you probably know him as G.K. Chesterton, one of the great, or not, if not the greatest Christian apologist of the 20th century.
Really?
He's definitely got to be on the Mount Rushmore of Christian apologists.
C.S. Lewis being the other, I guess.
I would say that for sure. The reason I say I hold Chesterton up there is because even cross-denominationally, people accept that Chesterton's gold when it comes to Christian apologetics, which is extremely difficult to do, to get Baptists, Lutherans, Roman Catholics, and non-denoms to agree on anything. And yet, it seems like when I talk with any group of people about G.K. Chesterton, they don't really have anything negative to say about him.
So he didn't offend anyone?
Oh, I'm sure he did. I mean, this is the United States of America. We can definitely find something to be offended by. But if you wanted to start a conversation with friends or family that are of a different church body, G.K. Chesterton might not be a bad place to start. You know, his book Orthodoxy, for example, or
Right.
any a number of his articles, his Christmas.
Everlasting Man, right?
He's Everlasting Man. What's that Christmas? Was it 1939 or something? He did the Christmas radio program to the United States.
Don't know.
That was the one about, I think you might have shared it with me, actually, or I shared it with you. But it was kind of his radio broadcast to America for Christmas.
He did a series of radio talks from 31 to 32 when he
And that's
died.
what it is, 31 and 32.
Right. And so he must have done one for Christmas.
Yeah, he did, which is very good. And in fact, that is the one about the pagan gods. That's right. I can share that. I
okay.
shared that with you and Chad Bird.
There you go.
That he talks about our modern gods, like the old pagan gods. We should be ashamed of how like poor our modern paganism is in comparison to the good old days of like real staunch pagan theology.
Well, and he's also, he's a philosopher, literary guy, right? He wrote for Encyclopedia Britannica.
Did he?
Yeah, he wrote the article on Charles Dickens.
Nice.
And the article on humor.
Oh, that would be why he quotes Dickens so much in his work.
Oh, yeah, he's clearly a Dickens guy.
Yeah, which we were thinking about diving into Dickens for the next episode or for a Christmas episode.
Maybe.
But instead, we got this one, which is the Christmas Ballads, where GK discusses, what makes a great carol, a good carol, and a bad carol, essentially.
He also wrote the Father Brown series. You have read
That's
those?
right. That's where I know him from. And The Man Who Was Thursday?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite novels or novelettes ever.
Where he's a priest, but he's the detective. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, Father Brown. The Man Who Was Thursday is different, but
Right.
yeah, Father Brown. Not to be, I mean, the BBC version of Father Brown is all right.
I like the one back from the 80s, but that's only because they filmed it at the church we were married in.
Okay, well, there we go. Once again, all theology is self-justification.
Chesterton was a high church Anglican until he converted to Catholicism. So,
Well, we all have our failings.
yeah.
We like the Anglicans on this podcast because they get the optics right a lot of times.
Yeah. They sing well.
They sing great.
They wear clothing that somewhat makes sense.
Right. They dress like wizards.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. Say your magic words, oh wizard.
You're a wizard, Harry. I wonder if that's what they hear at ordination. You're a wizard now, Harry. Anyways.
I think Chesterton would appreciate all of the humor.
Super punchy this morning.
Yep. Christmas Ballads.
The Christmas Ballads by Gilbert Keith Chesterton. When was this written?
I don't know. It's actually from an anthology called The Spirit of Christmas. So
There we go.
We'll link it up.
So let's dive in. It is in the old Christmas carols, the carols which date from the Middle Ages, that we find not only what makes Christmas poetic and soothing and stately, but first and foremost, what makes Christmas exciting, which I think is a great description of the Anglican Church. Poetic, soothing, and stately.
Yeah, that's true.
Actually, that actually describes the Zoll brothers pretty well, too.
Yep. Shout out to the Zolls. Hey, they put coffee on their Mockingbird wish list for Christmas.
Sweet. So check out Mockingbird because they buy Gillespie's coffee.
The history of the celebration of Christmas is pretty late. I mean,
Yes, very late.
It's not even. They don't even have an appointed date for the Western Church until the 5th century, late 5th century,
Late
early
5th century.
early
Yeah, and
6th.
it really isn't even until like the 9th or the 10th century that Christmas, as it came to be known.
Well, even the
really-
whole church year, not just Christmas. Yeah. Every Sunday was Christmas in a way before
Well,
that.
exactly. That's why they didn't celebrate Easter for a long time either. People are like, what? But Easter, it's so important. Yeah, every Sunday is Easter if you have the sacrament.
Right. So the idea that the medieval carols would kind of get it right is that, maybe that's the high point in a way.
Yeah.
It's when it really takes off.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that we talked about with relation to Athanasius and Luther, that if the medieval church got anything right, and it, not a lot, but this one, is that they really dove deep into incarnational theology. Ironically, the whole time they were busy trying to escape the body with the monastic life and the development of that. But yeah, incarnational theology, they really get deep into it, and that's why Christmas becomes so important in the Middle Ages. And the Passion Play, during Lent and Easter.
Well, and adding some drama to really probably a boring life.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like, what are we going to do tonight, honey? We're going to stare at a candle.
And keep vigil.
And keep the vigil. So yeah, we find not only what makes Christmas poetic, soothing, and stately, but first and foremost, what makes Christmas exciting. So thank you, Middle Ages, for that.
You're welcome.
The exciting quality of Christmas rests, as do all the other examples I have mentioned, on an ancient and admitted paradox. It rests upon the great paradox that The power and center of the whole universe may be found in some seemingly small matter, that the stars in their courses may move like a moving wheel round the neglected outhouse of an inn. Oh, I like that.
That is nice. I think
When Walt
wasn't Chesterton called like the king of paradox? I think that I read that somewhere.
Okay, we'll go with that.
So it's one of, well, and that puts him in common with Luther, right? Who also seems to love that tension.
Yeah.
Light and dark, or in this case, humility against majesty.
Right, God and man.
Mm-hmm. No.
So there is no object so soft. This is Walt Whitman now he's quoting. There is no object so soft, but it makes a hub for the wheeled universe. He expressed unconsciously, that is Walt Whitman did, what is the thrilling element in the story of Bethlehem. And it is extraordinary to notice how completely this feeling of the paradox of the manger was lost by the brilliant and ingenious theologians, and how completely it was kept in the Christmas carols. They at least never forgot that the main business of the story they had to tell was that the Absolute once ruled the universe from a cattle stall. Which, by the way, if you ever wonder, what is it that distinguishes Christianity from all other faiths? This is it right here.
It's that God and man, God is man.
Right. And again, this time of year, you'll have plenty of naysayers and scoffers and scorners of Christianity say, well, no, the story of Horus in Egyptian theology is the same, and Odin and this in Norse mythology, and in Roman mythology it's Mithras, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that there's similarities.
Of course.
No, in the sense that especially in modernity, these myths have been retranslated to bring them into closer alignment with Christianity and the Christian mythos, in the sense of explaining something that is incomprehensible, like how God can be ruling the whole universe from his cattle stall. And so, for example, what is the Bill Maher movie? Came out a while ago. Religiousness? What was
Something like that. Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, but anyways, it's all about how Christianity is ridiculous. Religulous or something like that. But and so he's like, well, here's the Egyptian religion. I'm like, one, you're misquoting the original text. Two, the original text that has been passed down, because we don't have the original text because it's ancient, has been retranslated so many times and tweaked and changed so many times. It's kind of like Norse mythology. Everything that we know about the Norse people as far as their religion and their practices were passed down by the monks, actually. So even Beowulf, which we did this whole series on my Banned Books podcast about a Warrior Priest podcast about Beowulf. Like everything about Beowulf that we have was actually translated by the monks. So as they're translating this ancient pagan story, they injected all kinds of Christian theology into the tale of Beowulf. So then after the fact, people say, well, look, Beowulf is so similar to this Christian myth over here. Well, yeah, because the monks translated both those texts. So we always have to be careful, especially on Christmas and Easter, that we don't start comparing Horus or Mithras or others to Jesus and draw a kind of binary one-to-one comparison. Because there's a lot of strategery going on there to make sure that everything aligns up in a way that it didn't originally.
Wasn't that kind of the danger of doing theology by analogy?
Yeah, for sure.
Where you rather than just tell the story, you tell like other stories to try to teach the story, but you don't ever get to the point. Because you have that abstraction or something.
Right. Well, I have a book, Mircea Eliade. Say that fast a couple times. Mircea Eliade was a famous comparative religious scholar at University of Chicago back in the day. And he had all of his graduate students for their theses go around the world and collect stories. So let's say you and I were Mircea's graduate students, and he would assign you creation myths. So he would send you to Papua New Guinea to gather oral creation myths.
All right.
But then he would assign me resurrection myths, and he would send me to South America, to, let's say Brazil, to the Amazon rainforest to collect resurrection myths. And then he assembled all these in a book that I actually have. You can get on Amazon. And they're by topic: creation, sacrifice, resurrection, the end times. And are there parallels? 100%. Striking parallels, But at the same time, yeah, that's because everybody who's ever been born has asked, where do we come from and where are we going and what's going to happen when we die?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the law.
Yeah. Same life questions. So
everyone is trying to find the resurrection. because no one wants to die eternally.
Mm.
No one wants to be judged by the gods. And therefore, it's a natural progression, whether you want to call it the transmogrification of the soul, as Plato did, or reincarnation, as the Indians do, which, by the way, they got directly from Plato by way of Alexander the Great, or the resurrection of the dead. Whatever you want to call it, it's still a question that's on every person's conscience, because you just go read Psalm 51 or Psalm 73 or Psalm 91 or something.
Right.
We're troubled by the fact that we are here, we exist, and yet we don't really know why.
And it seems to be so short.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like, what's the point? And so once you ask, it's the old joke of, we're out hunting for a woolly mammoth and, my buddy gets gored to death and I survive. It'll make you stop and ask the question, like, what's the meaning of life? Like, what am I doing here? And that's how agrarian culture evolved.
Is this was the book that you're referring to? Is that The History of Religious Ideas?
Yes.
Okay, 2 volumes.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I think that's it, by Mircea Eliade.
Yep.
Yeah.
I found it.
Yeah, and René Girard does something very similar, in Violence and the Sacred and other things that he did.
Right, and then there's, it's Star Wars time. I know you're not real excited, but...
it's disgusting. I condemn the entire trilogy
was
at
it
this point.
Campbell? Joseph Campbell?
Yeah, that's right.
With the hero journey?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. So yeah, it's human nature. It's the old Adam's nature to do this. And so the paradox, though, excuse me, it's that time of year. The paradox for Chesterton is all of those other creation myths, all those other savior myths, all those other resurrection myths, the gods appear to be like men or women, but they are not actually a man.
Yeah, they're other than.
Because they're gods. They can't actually become a man when they're already gods. Gods can't become men. Men can't become gods. That's how this works. You could become a demigod. The gods could choose you based, like you said, the hero's journey. I could get to the end of my journey, and because of my effort and my courage and my valor, be kind of elected by the gods to come to Olympus. But just like brave Viking warriors go to Valhalla, you're never a god. You're just welcomed in by the gods. Likewise, gods can never become men. They can only become welcomed in by men.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but here, no. We say he is fully God, yes, 100% God, but also fully man. So he rules the universe from a cattle stall. It is instructive, for example, to compare the cloudy pomposity of ordinary hymnology with the vigor and precision of the Christian idea in the old carol of, quote, when Joseph was a-walking. I go walking after midnight. By means of the plain antithesis of the old ballad, without the use of a single adjective, the fundamental idea of the Christ child is conveyed. He neither shall be born in house nor in hall, nor in the place of paradise, but in an ox's stall. He neither shall be christened in white wine nor in red, but in the fair spring water, where we were christened.
Oh, so there's a connection to the Christ child to us.
To baptism, really?
Yeah, via baptism.
Oops. Yeah, so for those of you who are like, Pastor Riley, you always make so much about baptism. Why? Well, because that's what Christians do. We find the connections everywhere. We see the connections everywhere. And here's a great example of that. Mm-hmm. Even at the stall, even at the ox's stall, there's a christening. Well, or at least a pointing to it.
And there were ritual washings, and they're recorded for us. What is that in Luke? Yeah, it's in Luke's gospel.
The pomposity of ordinary hymnology. I wonder if he's referring to Christmas hymns. Like it came upon a midnight clear, or
the oxen are lowing.
Little town of Bethlehem.
The baby awakes.
Yeah.
But no crying he makes.
Yeah.
Nonsense. That one. That's my favorite.
Yeah. He's fully man. I mean, he's not really. I mean, he's fully man, but he's still so awesome that he doesn't do things that normal babies do.
Well, I mean, there are obvious things that aren't recorded, but I think are reasonable to expect that he still did. I mean, you don't have to record every time, he needed a diaper change.
Right.
I mean, that would bog down the narrative a little bit.
Just a little bit. And now, page 137, his first poo-poo. No, it wouldn't.
This is his gender reveal party. Oh, that's terrible.
Exactly. That's right. Mary and Joseph out on the front lawn with a balloon. Ugh. Actually, Gender Reveal Fails is one of my favorite YouTube channels. It's just so fun to see people because it's so narcissistic.
Be careful what you joke about, though. I made a joke around some members the other day at church, and they're like, "Oh, we did that, and it failed."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry."
Yeah. It's just, it's It's so self-important.
Or the cake, where you bite into the cake and then, depending on what color it is.
It's like, really, you're going to invite everybody in your family and all your friends over to your house to pop a balloon so that blue or pink powder comes out? We know you're pregnant. We get it. It's going to be one or the other.
Well, maybe we did. I don't know.
Unless you reject, biology. Then maybe you could go for a lavender or a green or something.
Oh, that's right.
We don't want to limit his gender options to just two things. I mean, that's so oppressive.
But here's baby Jesus.
With all of his parts, because he's fully man. And maybe that's the pomposity of ordinary hymnology, is that it essentially divorces the reality of the manger from our ideals.
Well, we've talked about this in the past. I don't know, it goes around occasionally, different artwork and imagery that tries to show a little bit more realistic portrayal of the nativity.
Yeah.
Where it's not, everybody's glowing and
right.
And they're all provided for, and there's no fear of judgment or of Herod or whatever. And that's not the narrative.
No. They fled in the middle of the night in terror, as directed by an angel of the Lord.
Okay, it took a little while, but it does happen, and it's in that context.
No, I'm just saying though, like when the angels do show up, it's not, hey, this is awesome. Let's put that smoothing filter on this picture so there's no wrinkles or lines.
Right. And can we sing for a while?
Right.
Can we have a little hymn
you need
sing?
to run. Yeah. Run right now. Don't go home to pack. Just run.
Mm-hmm.
You can come back when he's dead.
Yeah, that's Christmas too.
Yeah, that's Christmas. Or the children of Rachel. Is it Rachel's children?
Rachel weeps for her children. Yeah. Because Rachel died in Bethlehem. So that's her time.
Yeah, Rachel died in Bethlehem, and her children did too. Horribly.
Right. So, and her children aren't the children of the promise. I mean, they do have the promise, but she's not the seed bearer.
Correct.
That's Leah.
So there's a tragedy within a tragedy within a tragedy going on at the birth of Jesus. But let's not dwell on that. People are not here to be sad. Let's sing some good hymns like "O Little Town of Bethlehem" and "Go Tell It on the Mountain."
Oh, that's my favorite.
Oh, there's nothing like a good Negro spiritual sung by Midwestern white people in 4/4 time.
Super snarky. Oh.
I know, honey. I know.
It's the holiday. It's the holidays. Don't call me honey.
That's what it is. That's the excuse. No, it's fun. You got to have fun with it. You got to laugh at yourself.
Yep.
So he neither shall be born in house nor in hall, nor in the place of paradise, but in an ox's stall. He neither shall be christened in white wine nor in red, but in the fair spring water where we are christened. There, I had to make it rhyme. Red and christened.
Little slant rhyme. Yeah.
But it also goes to the point, behold the Lamb of God crucified from the foundation of the world.
It's right there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's inescapable. So thus across the ages, filled more and more with dogmas and explanations and all the unending madness of the intellect, there comes to us in this nameless and wandering ballad the essential and tremendous claim of Christmas, the paradox on which it was built. Theologians have sought more and more to insist on the separation of Christ from humanity. Ding, 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 ding.
Winner.
It was the poetic inspiration of the old ballad, Manger, that he saw that the thrill of the divinity consisted in the completeness and perfection of the disguise. So he saw that the thrill of the divinity consisted in the completeness and perfection of the disguise. It is in his work that we realize that Christianity conquered because of the stunning insolence of its paradox. The paradox that a certain everlasting essence, when it chose to become a man, chose with a certain superb irony to become one of the humblest of men.
Yeah. Who is this guy? Isn't he the carpenter's son?
Right. Isaiah 53.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing that would make us want to look at him. Instead, we look away from him.
Oh, I thought he was like Ewan McGregor from the Star Wars prequels.
Right. That's right. I saw that meme this morning, too.
It goes around this time of year.
I'm going to tell my kids this is the reason for the season. Yeah.
But long-haired, Anglo-Saxon, Scottish in that case, actually. Ewan. Yeah.
No.
A Middle Eastern guy, humble, unknowable, really.
Right.
Apart from the words that he speaks.
Unremarkable. Yeah. One who appears to us as stricken by God, smitten and afflicted. A man of sorrows, well acquainted with sorrows.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, this goes to the point that we make all the time as Lutherans, or quoting Luther, I guess, more, is that this whole point of intellect and reason is that, in relation to our neighbor, use your reason, use logic, stifle your emotions, think. in order to help your neighbor. This is good. Let us come together and reason together.
Yeah.
In relation to salvation, it's worthless, utterly worthless.
And I think Chesterton's right here is that we can, in our dogmatic exploration, well, it's not really exploration. I mean,
Self-justification.
or building edifices, or we're trying to create this whole structure of religion that through that effort, I mean, you abstract just the bare essence of it, which is enough.
Right.
That Jesus was born for you. He died for you.
Well, for example, there's an old trope that Jesus didn't actually suffer the pain of passing through the birth canal, and Mary herself didn't suffer the
I feel like we've
pains
talked about this before.
common to every woman, because she's the mother of God, Theotokos, God-bearer, and therefore...
Well, she had to remain virgin, too.
Yeah, she had to remain ever virgin, and therefore the hymen, blah, blah, blah. Completely, like you said, not in the text.
Nope.
So therefore, I can't disprove that it's, not true. But again, it goes to the point of why the obsession with making him...
Well, and like I mentioned before with the one carol, why say he's not crying?
Right.
Because crying is sinful? Is that what you're trying to confess?
Right. All is calm, all is bright. Have you been anywhere where a baby's been born? In a hospital where the chances of failure of this birth failing are almost zero. Imagine giving birth in a cave, in the dark.
This was their first child. I mean, I delivered our last child, but I had nine times to kind of get the idea of what to do here.
Yeah. Well, it is kind of self-explanatory.
After a while, yeah. Well, everyone's a little unique, but it was like, yeah, it's messy.
I'm just saying, the A plus B equals C method of birthing is kind of like the baby's here, then the baby's there, and then someone catches the baby, and we got a baby.
Presumably. But yes.
Presumably.
But yes, messy and...
Yeah. Messy, loud, chaotic, depending on the birth. Especially, again, like you said, if it's your first child and you're giving birth in the dark, or at least by candlelight or by torchlight.
Well, and your birth assistant is Joseph, who...
Yeah.
Presumably had been skilled in the arts of midwifery.
Right, exactly. So all is calm, all is bright. Well, no, on both occasions, no. But it sounds great. Oh, little town of Bethlehem, not that night. The census. There was no room in the inn for them. A key point.
Didn't he say that before, that it was like an outhouse of a stall? Or outhouse of an
outhouse of an inn.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. There's no room in the inn. No. That's what the common narrative is. Well, there's no room in the inn. No, there was no room for them. Those two little words, for them, is important.
Yeah, there was always questions about fidelity in that marriage.
Fidelity, or just the fact of, could they pay? Could they not pay? Were they the right kind of people? What's the deal there? And we don't know. Again, we can speculate, and that's why we love Christmas.
It's their hometown, and their family turns them out. I mean, that's
right. And there's that part too, right? Why can't they stay with family? It's their hometown. There's a lot going on there. A lot. Well, Joseph accepted Mary after the angel revealed to him that she didn't have sex out of wedlock with another dude. But at the same time, does he want to explain that to his family? Does she want to explain it to her family? How is that going to go down in the neighborhood?
You think there might have been long-term consequence for that?
Maybe. But that's what I'm saying, is that there are so many gaps in the narrative that it actually invites the old Adam to insert explanations and commentary and to punch it up, as we say in the writing profession.
And I guess Chesterton's point is not towards the text, but actually away from the text.
Yeah, exactly.
Adding to it speculation that kind of smooths out the rough edges, or like you said, puts the soft focus filter on. Yeah.
Well, why don't we have a hymn for Christmas about Rachel's children? Right? Can you imagine singing a hymn at Christmas about Rachel and her children? Both the
they
historical.
Dropped it. Oh, they dropped it. There was one in the Lutheran hymnal, the old one. Sweet Flowerets of the Martyrs Band.
Right.
And then they dropped it because nobody sang it, because we don't celebrate that day.
Right. Yeah. Which is ironic when, especially in this day and age when more babies are murdered than in Herod's day.
When there's holy innocence being, dying all around us.
It's like Rachel is weeping for her children. And social commentary, 3, 2, 1. I mean, like Rachel, like they're weeping because Herod orders the murder of these babies. And yet, like you said, the murder of babies is going on around us constantly now in our culture. And then we push this hymn out of the way, which, by the way, is a great way to address the question of abortion. Bring the hymn in. There's your conversation starter. You can meditate on the text and ask, is this a legitimate, again, A plus B equals C relationship between these two things or not? Or you can just push that out because, like you said, it makes us uncomfortable. and it's not what Christmas is about.
Well, I mean, it's not just Bethlehem. There's other societies that have had various forms of infanticide.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, because they're inconvenient. I mean, even as simple as that. Or infirm in some way, going to be
as I point out constantly in the Old Testament, every god around Israel is a fertility god or goddess and a death god or goddess and demands sacrifice. And most sacrifice was human. We get this in Lamentations, actually, where the Israelites themselves are eating their own children.
Well, and that's the deal with Abraham being asked to sacrifice Isaac.
Right.
Is that it doesn't seem to be all that surprising to him.
No.
And God told me to do this. I mean, I know it's rough because he made me a promise, so I believe in the resurrection, sure. But just the idea of sacrificing your son doesn't cause you to be like repulsed.
Right, like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's still a bit
You can go with Luther and say, well, it's because he had great faith, which, true, he had faith. He trusted. But not at the same time.
Well, that's Hebrews, too. Hebrews 11, by the way.
Yeah, Hebrews 11, exactly. And so there's that aspect of it. But there's also, like you said, the human aspect, the first article aspect, which is, all of his neighbors are sacrificing people all the time. It's pretty normal to, especially, even if it's not children or virgins, it's the people you capture in war that you sacrifice to your gods. It's kind of what you do when you win.
Well, yeah, and even just God says, go kill everyone in Cana. Right. And they're like, okay. Well, I mean, after they get over their apprehension about the numbers. Yeah.
In the good old days, that's what you do. Until we lost our stomach for war, and then we send proxies to do it, in a sanitary and hygienic way. But I digress. There is another fine old carol, which I will mention in explaining my meaning. It is the carol in which is told the story of Stephen, the martyr. Or Stephen, if you want to mispronounce it. Careful historians of that period will be interested in learning for the first time that Stephen was a steward in King Herod's hall, and that he was a personal witness to the appearance of the Star of Bethlehem. King Herod, finding that the condition of a mystic accorded ill with the functions of a steward, summoned him to explain his reason for wishing to leave the palace. To quote, "Lacketh thee either meat or drink in King Herod's hall?" Stephen answers with the whole artistic energy of the Christian idea in his words, "Lacketh me neither meat nor drink in King Herod's hall. There is a child in Bethlehem born. Is better than we all."
Wow. I hadn't heard that legend of Stephen.
No. Huh. Where's that come from?
It's not in the Bible.
No. Okay, great. I just want to make sure that I missed some small detail in Stephen's testimony.
Chesterton is a romantic of sorts, right? So
right.
Yeah.
Well, no, I
like the sentiment, though.
Somebody needs to. Is there an old book where all of these are collected? These legends, these biblical legends, are collected. Because if not, somebody needs to make one.
Well, maybe Fox says it in the Book of Martyrs.
No, it's not. I've read that a couple times. This stuff isn't in there.
It's other guys. It's not Stephen.
It's just, I think it's just traditions that spring up here and there, especially medieval traditions.
Well, and I'd be interested in the apostolic ones, like Thomas went to India. Like, really?
Right. Yeah. That's an early church tradition.
No. I mean,
you see that popping up right away.
Right. I'm not saying it's not true, but I mean, it is a tradition.
Well, his church is, 77 AD? It's still there to this day in India. The church attributed to him.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But I think a lot of these, if I had to speculate, I think most of these are medieval myths because you got to remember that most people were illiterate. They couldn't read the Bible even if they had one. Most of the monks were illiterate. That's why they venerated the text. I've talked about that before in relation to illuminated manuscripts. And also, as I just talked about at the front end of this show, they translated other texts like the myth, the poem, the epic tale of Beowulf.
Right.
And so they're incorporating all kinds of myths and legends from the cultures in which they live into their theology and their piety. And they don't really have the biblical text to bounce these things off of to test whether or not it's orthodox.
That's true.
Because they're illiterate. So they're just absorbing these things in and quote unquote baptizing them like they did with Beowulf. And then you read Beowulf and you ask yourself, interesting.
Like, what do we call that? Like artistic liberty or something like that?
Yeah, like Beowulf is a saint. A servant of God because he kills Grendel and his mother and fights dragons. The dragon is Satan and therefore Beowulf fights the dragon. I mean, how does that work in your piety and your polity that Beowulf, this warrior, this Dane, is also a Christian?
Who's the dragon guy that the British like so much?
The dragon guy
that kills the dragons?
Saint Anthony?
No, it's not Anthony. Somebody's
See,
hitting the
I
dashboard.
know someone's slamming their fist against their dashboard again.
These guys talking
What is
about
it?
things they don't know about.
Bell and the Dragon?
No, that's apocryphal text.
I know, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to rub salt in the it's right here. St. George.
George, there you go.
Right.
Yeah. Nice idea. I like it. Fighting dragons. That's
George is not a knight's name. I'm sorry. I disqualify you outright if your name is George and you're a knight.
You are not an Anglophile.
I know. That's what I was saying about Chesterton's names before. I'm like, Gilbert Keith Chesterton. It just doesn't sound British to me. Again, it sounds like a contemporary Christian or
It sounds like he should be smoking
country
a
artist.
cigar, drinking his tea, and with his monocle. Come on.
I just don't know. I don't know.
His bowler hat.
Well, that's why he went with GK, obviously, because he wasn't comfortable with his name either. Kind of like C.S. Lewis.
Nobody
It
likes
was
their name.
J.R.R. Tolkien.
Okay.
It was a thing.
All right. We made a point. Yeah.
It was a thing. But yeah, it's interesting how these myths spring up, these legends spring up along the way, and we don't really know where they started. They just became popular. And some die with, some are buried by history, but others like this persist.
Well, and I think one of the things that Chesterton's getting after here is like, okay, if you are going to take some artistic liberty, with the actual events, you're going to bring in these legends or whatnot, let it be, for the sake of the gospel.
Right.
Rather than just to create this like idyllic scene that isn't the gospel, because that's, what do we call it? Being a theologian of the cross, which is really that salvation comes underneath this, messy, mixed up relationship and between God and man, and now, between Jesus and even his parents and his relatives, and they don't always get along so well. And it's real. It's not just,
it's real. Exactly. It's real. Because either, to quote Hebrews again, he is either like us in every way, but without sin, or he's not.
And that includes his family.
And in every way, it must be in every way.
Yeah. His birth, his family.
Because how can he sympathize with us in every way, and even sympathize with us down to the moment of conception? And something like someone who miscarries a baby, or gives birth and the child is stillborn.
Right.
Like, he must sympathize with us in every way. Otherwise, the question will hang over your head like the sword of Damocles. What's the eternal fate of this child? The child's not baptized, for example. So what's going to happen to this baby? Right. I've had that question. I'm sure you've had that question asked of you as a pastor, or just had it yourself, is like, again, just in the vocational side, your relationship to the person asking that question hangs on how you answer this question. It really does.
Yeah.
And I've seen people leave church forever based on the answer.
Well,
because it's such a painful question. I mean, there's so much pain that is carried inside that question.
If you answer, I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of I'm going to choose a neutral area, neither hot nor cold. But in my experience, they take that as a negative. Just the same as saying, well, we just don't know, or, well, we have to pray. No, not in this situation. That is not an adequate response.
Or you could say that Jesus died for the sins of the world.
Exactly.
The whole world, everyone.
And this is yet again another instance. As I explain to people, sin isn't what you do. Sin is who you are. Sin is so deep and corrupt within us that our own bodies reject the work of God in us to create life.
Yeah.
That, I was conceived in sin. From my mother's womb, I came forth in. God creates you, which in and of itself, therefore, is an act of grace. That knowing full well you're who you are and what you'll become, he still creates you in order to redeem you. And sin is so deep within us that we will even abort ourselves to avoid having to be created, redeemed, and sanctified by the one who creates us.
Yeah.
And so that to me, that is the most profound tragedy of our existence, is that we so avoid that conversation because that's sin, and it's unavoidable because we don't have any control over it at that point. Any more than when someone gets dementia, Alzheimer's. They don't have any control over that.
I think that's the tragedy of a Christmas where you avoid that, where it's all about, almost like pie in the sky kind of, oh, holy night, that's just beautiful, and stars and all of that. And the animals are all well behaved, which I think is also kind of funny in the nativities.
People who have never lived on a farm.
Oh, they're all just sitting there worshiping. Okay.
Exactly.
Sure. And One, because we don't do that. So why would we expect the animals to do that? That's a whole other story.
Well, this goes back to my point about how we plant forests versus how God creates forests. The same way, like God creates animals to praise him at all times. And so what we look at and go, they're not behaving is actually how they're praising, thanking God, serving God in their vocation as creatures.
My point is that if we avoid the reality of whatever people are coming with, how sin is broken out in their life, how they're experiencing that on Christmas, then we lose the comfort of Christmas too.
Right.
And it just becomes this mythological tale that I don't know why it would uplift us, but I guess it just kind of does because it seems amazing, rather than actually it's for you.
Yeah. Well, and this is Luther's point in his Christmas sermon: "Unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given." The two important words are to us, for us. He's given to us.
Not just any baby, anytime, any place.
Yeah.
But specific time and place and for you.
Yeah, exactly. And so as a consequence, lacketh thee either meat or drink in King Herod's hall? Or lacketh thee either meat or drink in King Herod's hall? Stephen answers with the whole artistic energy of the Christian idea in his words, lacketh me neither meat nor drink in King Herod's hall. There is a child in Bethlehem born, is better than we all. To which Chesterton comments, the utter logical irreverence and the sublime spiritual relevance of the connection between the first couplet and the last is the summary of all enthusiasm.
Yeah, this world does not matter because everything matters now in Jesus.
Right.
And whether Stephen was there or not isn't really the point. I think it's the fact that Stephen does confess Christ in his death after the resurrection.
Exactly. There's a small and vulgar fashion of discouraging carols at Christmas, Pastor Gillespie.
What?
People who chat cheerfully amid all the infernal noises of the underground, people who endure the rattle of 1,000 vehicles over a stony road, pretend that they dislike the sound of Christmas carols. To pretend to be like a thing may be a sin. To pretend to dislike a thing comes near to the sin against the Holy Ghost. Ouch. Ouch.
Zing.
Ow. At least it may be hoped that few at this season may listen to these songs. They are the last echoes of the cry that renewed the world.
Wow. That's a little idyllic, though.
Dang, son. That's some hard law at the end.
Well, and I think about that.
That's good.
I think about this because, the Church of England is kind of a mess. And, that's probably understatement. It's just empty. It's just empty. I mean, there's buildings, there's no people going. And then they have, like King's Choir Cambridge, right, where they have the lessons and carols, and it's this international event where they listen to carols, mostly faithful and, and beautiful and sublime, and sometimes even get to the point. They're like, well, maybe Chesterton's right. I mean, that's about all that's left, but it's there. And, God willing, they hear a little bit of what the scripture teaches through it all.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And like I said, going back to that point of, sorry, I'm writing notes for my Christmas Eve sermon now based on this conversation.
There you go.
But if you let loose the tension of the incarnation of God, for example, this is a perfect example what Chesterton is pointing at, which is there is a rich tradition within these carols that is actually holding the line against the kind of deforestation of Christmas, no pun intended, of like, well, we're going to take away everything from Christmas that reminds us of what the Gospels proclaim about Christ or what the prophet Isaiah has to say or Zechariah or whoever it might be. Because that reality is too harsh.
And we'll add snow and going to grandma's house. And
we'll add in our myths and legends to soften it, to filter it, to make it palatable to us, which you said is the theology of glory. And that really is what Christmas and Easter have become, is these two monumental, days in the church year that are just this exclamation mark of a theology of glory.
It makes me think of the canticle for, I think it's Matins on Christmas. It's called O Manuum Mysterium. And it had, usually the settings of the music are just, the music is it doesn't sound all that uplifting.
Right.
But the text is a great mystery and wonderful sacrament that animals should see the newborn Lord lying in a manger. Yeah. Blessed is the virgin whose womb was worthy to bear the Lord Jesus Christ.
Right. Yeah.
That's the point.
Right.
There he is.
And so in a strange way, this podcast, thanks to Chesterton, has become how to judge a Christmas hymn.
Yeah, it's in the background, isn't it?
It is all the time. And that's what he's driving at here is yes, we take poetic license. Yes, we take artistic license because, as I said, there are gaps. There's huge gaps in the Christmas narrative, in the birth narrative. But as you noted, and I think most importantly, how does this point to Christ given for you for the forgiveness of sin?
Yeah, if that carol says something like, the wood of the manger is the wood of the cross, or makes that,
Yeah, absolutely.
that connection, you're like, okay, it's not there. There is a parallel.
Right.
But that, if Jesus is right, that all Scripture testifies of him, and that everything leads to the cross, then even his manger is pointing us forward, that he's in a feeding trough, and he gives himself to us as bread, for example.
Yeah, born in the house of bread, by the way.
Yeah, Bethlehem.
Bethlehem in Hebrew. Bethlehem literally means house of bread.
Bethlehem. Come on.
Bethlehem. So the bread of life is born in the house of bread in a feed box.
Coincidence?
I was going to say, I don't think you have to stretch the analogy too far at that point. It kind of preaches itself.
Right, yeah. So is that artistic license, or is that actually really just being faithful?
That's just the divine foxiness. Like, I realize you're all kind of dumb, so let me just spell this out for you as clearly as possible. In the house of bread, the bread of life, the stuff from the temple, is going to be found in a feed box.
Hint,
Are we clear?
Nudge, nudge?
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's like, I still don't get it.
Do that again, Pastor. Can you say that again?
The Messiah is going to be bread? Never mind. I'll just come and do it myself.
You'll get it later.
You'll get it later, exactly.
When I send the Holy Spirit on you. Yeah.
That's right. But I got nothing else.
Nice.
You got anything?
Oh, this is a fun little essay.
This is good stuff. We've discussed it, and we'll do it at the tail end here. But I think we think what we're going to start doing now in the new year especially is we're going to start doing 2 podcasts a week, but one now is going to be something like this with Chesterton that we can kind of sit back and go, this is some good stuff. And then we'll do the other one where we sit back and go, that's kind of wacky. That's kind of different.
Psychedelic.
Yeah. All right. Where's he coming from? So that way we can have some fun, but at the same time offer you up some spiritual meat to chew on as well.
There you go. Yeah, a little bit of both.
Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're having a wonderful Christmas season, a Christmas time. Merry Christmas to all of you who listen. Thank you for your time and attention. We truly appreciate it. And I hope that you get preached into the incarnation and resurrection this time of year.
Nice.
See you next time. Bye.